Hello friends, and welcome to this week's edition of Save Our Schools with Dear JCPS. Dear JCPS is a district-focused stakeholder advocacy group that demands accountability and transparency from JCPS through a lens of equity. Save Our Schools Kentucky is a statewide advocacy group that seeks to expose and prevent attempts to privatize our public schools, including charter schools and everything else from the ALEC playbook. This is the July 29th, 2021 episode of Save Our Schools with Dear JCPS on Forward Radio 106.5 FM. Today's episode is focused on the July 27th school board meeting that took place in Jefferson County Public Schools.
Now, to start off, I'd like to bring up Tara Walker, who is co-chair of the Kentucky Alliance Against Racism and Political Repression.
Thank you, and good afternoon, and thank you all for coming out. The Kentucky Alliance, we have a statement from our legislative committee. There is no cause to fear for teaching the history of Black people in this country or the systems in our history to maintain slavery. Critical race theory is not a relevant topic in JCPS or in any other K-12 school in Kentucky. It is not being considered, nor is it being discussed in other curriculum. Even those who say they oppose efforts to teach about racism in this country agree with us on the basic tenets of equality and truth. Let's work to bring equality, truth, understanding, and compassion to our youth together. I'm only going to read the beginning of that because we do need to teach the truth. I have 5 JCPS students, 3 graduates from JCPS, and my children, my nieces and nephews, have told me they want to know the truth about their history. So let's ask our kids. Let adults stay out of children's education and let the kids speak for what they want to know and what they want to learn. I agree we should know the truth. We should know so that we do not repeat history. With that being said, I will save the rest of my speech for if I get a chance to speak at the board meeting today. Thank you.
All right.
Also, I'd like to bring up Vicki Jones, Chair of Pan-African Studies at the University of Louisville.
Thank you, Coach. I don't want to take very long. Our approach this is a little bit different than a lot of other people. There are certainly folks who want to be democratic and diplomatic about this topic. Folks who want to negotiate with people who are coming from the other side. I'm not one of those people, and I want to be very clear that I'm not one of those people. I've been an educator in this community for 25 years now. Got a PhD when I was 28 years old. It was not an affirmative action PhD. I'm a smart dude like that. I'm the chair of one of the oldest Black Studies departments in this country that happens to be at the University of Louisville.
All right.
I've been very proud to serve as the longest serving chair of that department. We do teach critical race theory.
Yes.
All critical race theory is the belief that racism is not something that should be studied on an individual level. It must be studied on an institutional and structural level. Many of the people who supposedly oppose critical race theory cannot intellectually, honestly, and decently, strongly discuss critical race theory or the fact that institutional racism is an American reality, both historically and contemporarily.
Yeah.
White supremacy is an American reality,
Yes.
both historically and contemporarily. You cannot discuss America, the structure of America, the foundational construction of America without discussing at least 2 things. The country's original sin, its mistreatment of Native Americans on this land,
Yes.
its virtual extinction. Its second sin, the enslavement of African-descended people on this soil, simply because of the color of their skin. So if folk now want to make the argument that we should not teach these facts about our country and how far we have come from that reality and how far we have to go, because it'll hurt some people's feeling and cry reverse racism, that is a canard, it is a lie, it is a deception. Nobody in their right mind has stood in any classroom in Kentucky or anywhere in this country, quite frankly, and said that white people are inferior to Black people in an institution of education that is legitimate. What we always teach is that none of us are inferior to anybody else because of the color of our skin. That has not been the message that America has given to black people. That has not been the message that America has given to Asian descendant people.
Yeah.
That is not the message that America has given to Native Americans. And we need to understand why. So to keep it very short, there is space for diplomatic people. But I believe that what Representative Decker and her friends are doing, and she said the other day at the Louisville Forum, this isn't just about critical race theory. She said it's about critical race theory and its progeny. She said she's anti-critical race theory. She's anti-social justice as it's being presented to people. So this is about the reaffirmation of educational indoctrination that's been going on in these school systems forever.
Yes.
And it reaffirms real European communism and white supremacy. That must be deconstructed. That doesn't mean that white people are evil. It doesn't mean that they're less than anybody. But I think what these people are doing is not only immoral and supremacist, I think it's unconstitutional and illegal.
Yes.
And if anybody puts anything in place to make the teaching of institutional racism a crime, I am a criminal. I am self-reporting right now. I didn't teach critical race theory in my classes before, but now I'm going to do it in every class, and I'm going to wait for these people to show up at the door. I'll see you again at the schoolhouse door, in the street, or in court.
All right.
Amen.
Yes, brother.
All right.
Hey.
Jim Johnson.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. My name is Jim Johnson. I'm a former JCPS Jefferson County Public School teacher, and I spent the last 5 years in my career teaching social studies. So, having gone through the entire social studies curriculum, core content, protecting core content standards, I know there's not much African American history in that curriculum. Not much LGBTQ history, and not much history about Native Americans. That needs to change. So that part needs to change. We need a more comprehensive African American history in our Kentucky core content standards, so everybody feels good about teaching that history. And the other thing is, there are two bills that have been pre-filed before the Kentucky State Legislature. One by Matt Lockhart, the other one by Joe Fisher, two Republicans, that are designed to impede the teaching of African American and Native American history. Those bills, all of us here today, from ASALA, from Louisville Fellowship of Reconciliation, from Stand Up for Racial Justice, Louisville FOR, we oppose those two bills. Right now, they're addendums to bills that will be reintroduced in 2022 at the state legislature. So we don't want to impede the teaching of African American history and Native American history. We want to celebrate that teaching. It is the honest thing to do. It is the best thing to do for both African American and people of color, as well as white students. Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here.
I'd like to call up Michael T.
Good evening. I'll be very brief here. First of all, I want to say I appreciate all the statements that were made before. And then we need to keep it real here. This opposition to critical race theory and even the 1619 project is part of a larger movement that was spearheaded in part by Trump, but not just Trump, but a lot of other white supremacists and white nationalist forces that have been in this country a long time, right? And I don't want to confuse that with ordinary working class white folks, because just like white supremacy itself, it didn't start among ordinary white folks or working class people. This was a top-down movement. The slave owners had to break up the fledgling unity between all neighbors during the colonial period. White and black people were united, just as we've been united since then. But there are fascists, white nationalist elements who have been in control of this country for a long time, and this is what they want. It's no coincidence that one of the last things Trump did before he left office was ban the teaching of critical race theory. And these Biden had enough sense to reverse that. But of course, because of Trump, those reactionary elements now feel emboldened, even with Trump out of office. And keep in mind, 74 million people voted for him, so that's not anything to take lightly. But we must resist that movement, because it's not only an assault on teaching black history, which has always been part of it. It's an assault on teaching social justice. These people are against teaching LGBTQ history. They're against teaching women's history and the history of any oppressed and exploited people.
Thank you. I'd like to call up Jay Edelman.
Thank you. My name is Jay Adelman. I am co-founder of Dear JCPS and Save Our Schools Kentucky, but also chair of the Coalition for the People with Data Education Committee. And want to invite you to sign up on our sign-in sheet so that we can stay in touch with you, because we are organizing and mobilizing statewide, because this does affect JCPS more than any other district in the state, but the decision lies in the hands of people outside of our district. And so we have to make sure that they who are running for office and are voting for these bills and sponsoring these bills know that this is their last term. So please give us information so we can stay in touch with you. I also want to just point out the fact that the hearings for the insurrection began, the House Select Committee began the hearings today. And this is not a coincidence that these same people that have been storming the Capitol in D.C. have been storming and disrupting school board meetings and work sessions and spewing misinformation and saying that what we are doing is hateful and divisive, when in fact they're the ones that are doing things that are hateful and divisive. So we hope to have a chance to speak at tonight's board meeting, but because the masks, which is also related to all of this, the denial of COVID, the denial of the accuracy of
The sound on my live stream becomes garbled, and so I have edited it out here. But I've left the video playing because I want you to see that the next speaker is Vincent Gonzalez. And Vincent is a non-white man, and a white woman has just entered the screen who begins speaking very loudly and disrupting. We are grassroots organizers and members of the public school community, stakeholders in our community. And we've been working within the system for years, decades in some of these community members' cases, to bring difficult change forward. And it's a painstaking process, and it requires diligence and persistence. And these people are showing up at our board meetings at the first inconvenience of having to wear a mask or having to learn about something that makes students uncomfortable. And there's no regard given to what those families continue to have to face. The one time white people feel inconvenienced or uncomfortable, everything must come to a screeching halt. I walked over and said a few words to her, and WHAS had a camera rolling, and so that's what you're going to hear next.
Good education
for your children.
Why don't you listen to the black man? Listen to the black people. Listen. I do. He's answering your question. They tell me what they want.
In their formidable years. Thank you.
Unfortunately, the rest of the press conference was unrecognizable. I hope some of it was captured elsewhere. We now return to speakers from Tuesday night's JCPS school board meeting. We feel that it would be dangerous to share some of the sentiments that were shared by some of the speakers without putting qualifiers and explaining why their viewpoints are harmful. So we will save those excerpts for a future broadcast.
To turn it over to our superintendent for the superintendent's report, Dr. Marty Polio.
Thank you, Chair Porter and board members. Tonight, I bring you the superintendent report for Tuesday, July 27th, 2021. I'm also excited to update you from yesterday on the progress of facility improvements in JCPS. We've talked about those for many years, but I've seen firsthand 3 amazing new improvements to our district. So first off, I wanted to highlight yesterday a press conference on the 3rd floor of the Academy at Shawnee. This has been a problem that I've discussed for several years when being in this role, and as a matter of fact, I think Chair Porter and I discussed the situation at Shawnee within a couple of months of me first taking the position. And I know she's talked about it long before that as well. And so when we refer to equity, we refer to a lot of things, but definitely facilities as well. And I will say this, I've yet to find another school in the United States that has an entire condemned floor, much less one that has been condemned for 4 decades, which it has at the Academy at Shawnee. So it was a great day for JCPS, Chair Porter and I to sit in a beautiful new space in the Academy at Shawnee on their 3rd floor and host an activity on the 3rd floor at the Academy at Shawnee for the first time since 1982. Thank you. For far too long, students, staff, community have had to have a second-rate, or I'd probably even say 3rd or 4th-rate facility for the students in that community. Now the students and staff at Shawnee get to walk in the building on August 11th with a renovated new 3rd floor, a new auditorium, a new swimming pool, new library, new HVAC, new front office with enhanced security. Meanwhile, we're progressing rapidly with our new schools in the Newburgh area and the Dixie Highway corridors, and we'll be breaking ground on a new school at 18th and Broadway in the next few weeks. This is true progress in JCPS with facilities. Finally, as I conclude, I know this is a difficult meeting. We have a large crowd here tonight. There is no doubt about it, and difficult decisions have to be made. So I couldn't give a superintendent report without at least addressing what we have to deal with tonight. I can say I'm so excited about having our first true opening day of school in buildings with all of our students in 2 years. And I want the board and the community to know 2 main things through this difficult decision-making process. This was another very difficult decision in an 18-month period for all of us of making tough decisions with a very divided community. So first, I'm committed to doing everything possible to ensure that we are in school for in-person learning for a total of 175 school days for this coming school years. Our students need the 21-22 school year more than ever before. Therefore, we have to be committed to implementing all of the recommendations that you will hear in our presentation on returning to school, including masking, contact tracing, testing, distancing, and cleaning in order to stay in school. And I want to reiterate this point. With the number of COVID cases growing and the potential for mass quarantining, that is the issue here. The number of staff and students that we will have to quarantine if we do not take every step. Our only hope of staying in school is that we implement every mitigation strategy possible so our students stay in school. And so we must do everything to keep our students in school and to let them learn. Second, I will always strive to bring you a recommendation that directly reflects the guidance from public health organizations. So throughout this process, we've often seen conflicting guidance from these organizations, and that's been the hard part for us, whether it's state or federal or local. There has been conflicting guidance throughout this entire process. However, this is not one of those times. The recommendations to us are very clear. As we currently stand, nearly every public health organization is in line of what it will take to keep our students in school for the entire year. This includes the CDC, the American Association of Pediatrics, the Kentucky Department of Public Health, the Louisville Metro Health Department, and the governor's office. And although making these recommendations has often been difficult based on the guidance that has not been aligned, the very aligned guidance that we have right now from the multitude of health organizations, this one is very clear. We must provide the same safety measures in our school as nearly every other district in the Council of the Great City Schools has already done. This is already happening in schools all across America, the large districts right now. And so we have been getting a plethora of studies. And I did want to highlight one that was just released by Duke University on June 30th, 2021, where they studied the students returning to school last year and the effectiveness of masks. Here is what they said. Going forward, masks will remain essential to preventing the spread of COVID-19 in schools, particularly as younger children remain ineligible for vaccines. I'm just reading off a survey or a study. And the highly transmittable Delta variant of coronavirus spreads throughout the U.S., researchers said. Because children younger than 12 required.
Excuse me, you can hold up your signs, but you must not talk when the superintendent is talking. That is not what we're going to do in here. You can hold up your signs, but you may not talk when the superintendent is talking. There will be order in this room. If you don't want to be in order, take it to the lobby. We've got work to do tonight. Thank you. Dr. Polio, please continue.
I'll continue. Because children younger than 12 require different dosages of COVID-19 vaccines, these vaccine trials will likely last longer than they did for teenagers, perhaps for several months. With mask wearing in place, students who come into contact with an infected person but who test negative for the virus should be able to continue going to school without having to quarantine, researchers said. Viral spread isn't a big risk if people are wearing masks. This came from Duke University on June 30th. And finally, as of 3:05 p.m. today, the CDC updated their recommendations to say that everyone in a K-12 setting should wear a mask indoors. That includes teachers, staff, students, and visitors. And once again, I believe this will become a part of the Kentucky public health policy moving forward, and most likely the Kentucky Department of Education in the week to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Polio. Tonight is the first time that we will have an opportunity to have speakers with us at the board. So at this time, we're going to start with our speakers. I will actually start with two speakers on the agenda, item XV22, the MOA with the U of L for dual credit courses. We have two speakers. The first one is Catherine Punsley, and the second one is LaHoy Leininger.
Hi, my name is Katie Punsley, and I am the Rise and Innovative Learning Coach at the Du Bois Academy. But one of my favorite and I think most impactful roles has been as an ESL teacher in JCPS. I will say one of the most challenging things about teaching ESL, especially for the newcomer students, is the process of culture shock and watching people go through the pressures of assimilation, you know, and trying to fit into American middle school life. When I was teaching, I was very heartbroken one year. I had a student from the Republic of Congo who said to the class in frustration, "I want to forget my language. I want to forget Kinyarwanda." And a bunch of other students near him from Uganda, from Tanzania, nodded in agreement, and it opened up a really fruitful conversation about the importance of holding on to our cultural ties. But I want to instill the importance, and I try to with my students, that forgetting your native language doesn't help you become better at English, and forgetting your culture doesn't make you more American. It doesn't help you fit in any better. And so part of the importance of this introduction to Pan-African studies is really giving an opportunity for students to see themselves represented. Our quote unquote minority students, our underrepresented students now make up 57% of our student body, right? And it's not just beneficial to those students, it's beneficial to all students. While our textbooks do mention other experiences, often this stuff is just a sidebar or a footnote, and it needs to be the main focus. And so what we're really hoping is to have a curriculum that mirrors for these, for our African students, for our Black students, their culture, but also provides for all students a window into other people's lived experiences. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker, please.
Oh. Hi, my name is Hallie Linninger. I have 2 children in JCPS schools, and I am a healthcare provider with Norton. I don't have prepared remarks like Kate, but I really want to echo what she said about how Pan-African Studies courses are excellent for all students. I mean, I know that my undergraduate degree is in science, but some of the most interesting and informative classes I took were kind of a windows into other experience. And I think that's wonderful to provide our high schoolers with that's a college level experience to have these more in-depth courses. So that's good for everyone. Since I have a few minutes, I'll say that as a healthcare provider, it turned out I was wrong about masks. I thought that they wouldn't make a huge difference, but the math doesn't lie. When we started unmasking, we saw a huge rise in cases. I want my students to be able to go to school in person for as long as possible, and that means exactly what Dr. Polio was saying, that they need to be taking every possible precaution. They need to be wearing masks, and so that they can go to school and not be held out for days from getting COVID. We have to stop the spread and serve our students. And hey, I still have more time. It sounds like some of the people here are against teaching accurate history in school or want to limit what our teachers can teach. I think that is, oh, I am? Oh, sorry.
Please keep talking because you have your time. Please allow her the courtesy to finish what she has to say.
So just like the Pan-African Studies course, I mean, I think teachers should have the freedom to teach the accurate versions of history. We shouldn't try to corral them into, there shouldn't be secret things about history they can't teach. That doesn't benefit anyone. And it makes their jobs harder.
Thank you very much.
This is the July 29th, 2021 episode of Save Our Schools with Dear JCPS on Forward Radio 106.5 FM.
The next agenda item that we will address is the next steps for the opening of school. Michael Washburn. Thank you for being with us this evening.
Thank you all for having me. First, I'd like to just extend a thanks to Dr. Polio for so vigorously defending the health of the students that are his charge. My name is Michael Washburn, and I have a kid set to enter first grade at Bloom this fall. And I just want to take a couple of minutes to stress my position that in line with most of the guidance coming from the CDC, the KDE, and the governor's office, the JCPS enforce a universal mask mandate for all students, faculty, and staff. I think mask requirements are particularly urgent when it comes to elementary school students who have no means of protecting themselves other than relying on the good faith and mask use of their fellow students and the faculty and staff that work and care for them. Without requiring masks, as well as following all other guidance about distance and hygiene, children are going to be exposed to unnecessary and avoidable risk. I agree kids need to be in school, and on this, I think we can all agree, even the parents behind me who disapprove of the mask requirement. But again, to echo some previous comments, masks will keep kids in school. Put another way, the lack of a comprehensive masking and other protocols will keep kids out of school. Every time there is an exposure, kids will be forced out of their schools until it's safe for them to return. And this will obviously be terribly disruptive to both classroom stability and to the educational progress of these children. And although these exposures are probably almost a certainty, I think that we can reduce significantly the frequency of such disruptions with masking. Second, I think as a community, and schools are nothing if not communities of learning and support, community should do its utmost to promote the safety concerns of its most vulnerable members. Given the rise of the Delta variant, it's a grim reality that we are far from the end of this pandemic. So yeah, statistically speaking, young kids are less likely to suffer significant illness. But given that we don't know much about Delta or the long-term impacts of COVID infections or what else the future holds in store for COVID variation, using that statistic as a way to dodge the bare minimum of safety precautions for children is beyond reckless. In effect, there has been no change in the threat that the virus poses to young children since last year when schools were closed. Society is better protected in aggregate due to the vaccine rollout, but child by child, each kid remains just as at risk as they always have been, if not at greater risk due to the Delta variant's transmissibility. Public health is about prevention as much as treatment, and public schools have a mandate to protect as much as they have to educate. Finally, I urge you to approve an NTI option for elementary school kids so that parents who remain apprehensive about sending their unvaccinated kids will have a public school option. And that also and obviously applies to families who disapprove of masking. They should have a public school option if a mask mandate is unacceptable to them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next speaker will be Kristen Dodge. Kristen Dodge.
Okay. Before I start, I just wanted to say I would never use the word only as a modifier talking about the death of a child. Good evening, Chair Porter and Board. My name is Terrence Sullivan, and I'm speaking to you wearing two hats, but from a similar perspective, that of racial equity. Hat number one, as the Executive Director of the Kentucky Commission on Human Rights. Hat number two, as the Vice Chair for JCPS Advisory Council on Racial Equity. Both of these perspectives intersect addressing the racial inequities that can be addressed through proper COVID mitigation strategies adopted by this board and the district. Health inequities are real, and this virus has done nothing but exacerbate those differences. Health inequities refer to systematic differences in the underlying health of a community. The lower income and more Black, Hispanic, Latinx communities of Louisville have seen inequitably high rates of infection and death due to COVID-19. This is further impacted by poverty and chronic illnesses that create a higher risk for complications and higher death rates. When it comes to equity in how we address these health disparities, universal masking, as recommended by Dr. Polio, is the safest direct option that can be taken. Further, in order to really address the disparate health impacts for students of color, a target date for 100% staff vaccination is paramount. Other large municipalities are taking this step, and including school officials, and this is the best way to improve health outcomes for all students, not just the ones who reside in the wealthiest zip codes. The Delta variant is serious. This strain is twice the potency of the initial strain that saw us completely reimagine schooling and society. Looking at data, research has shown that most transmission in schools spreads from adult teacher to student. If these students were returning home to vaccinated communities, that's one thing, but that's not the case here. Looking at the most recent data, for example, Black residents of Jefferson County are vaccinated at a much lower percentage, making up 13% of the vaccinated population. The overall vaccination rate for lower income neighborhoods is between 0 and 30%, whereas more affluent areas are closer to 70%. There are children to protect, and this is a way to do it. Currently, around 16.8% of students 10 to 14 are vaccinated. Granted, that starts at age 12, and 37.5% ages 15 to 19. Those are not great odds and not as logistically plausible to address as staff status. This helps protect those vulnerable populations while also combating the virus in the classroom. The school should also play a leading role.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Tiffany Calvert and then Chuck Eddy. Tiffany Calvert.
Good evening. My name is Tiffany Calvert. I am a professor at the University of Louisville and the proud parent of a first grader at Hawthorne Elementary. Go Hawks. First, I want to thank the board and all the JCPS teachers and staff for their incredibly hard work past school year in support of our students in a difficult environment, transferring quickly and expertly to a hybrid model. I appreciate your hard work. Thank you also, Dr. Polio and the board, for advocating a universal masking policy for the start of the school year. I think we can all agree that our collective top priority is to get students back in the classroom, and the best and most equitable way to do this, to provide equitable public education for all students in Louisville, is to provide them a safe environment. The overwhelming evidence in support of keeping that goal, of keeping students in the classrooms as safely as possible, is to maintain universal masking, and masks are only one piece of this evidence-based approach. I support layered strategies, including distancing, cohorts, and air quality measures. I want to remind everyone here that we protect not only children who cannot yet get vaccinated, but all of the most vulnerable people in our society who either cannot receive the vaccine and who live in a home with a child, or are under things like chemotherapy, multiple sclerosis, or cancer treatment. We are protecting all of them as well. To end, I hope JCPS will adopt the CDC recommendation released today and a universal mask policy for K through 12 for the protection of all our students and teachers. Thank you so much.
Chuck Eddy. Chuck Eddy.
Good evening. Thank you, board members. We've had 611,251 American deaths due to COVID-19. That's unnecessary. Dr. John Campbell of England recently discussed a study for Delta variant that says the viral load is 1,200 times worse than the original COVID-19. That study has been posted on virological.org. Masks have been shown to reduce the spread of disease by reducing the spread of droplets and aerosol transmission. Unfortunately, in our country and state, everyone did not mask up. It's not a personal choice or a matter of liberty, it's a matter of public health. It has been since day one. The high numbers of COVID-19 cases and deaths in our country have been due to people fighting masking, social distancing, and now vaccinations. To show how serious this disease is, the Veterans Administration has just issued the following. Veterans Administration issues vaccine mandate for healthcare workers of first for federal agency employees who provide direct patient care have 8 weeks to get inoculated against the coronavirus or face penalties, including possible removal. We need to maximize masking in schools to reduce the spread of COVID-19. We need to prevent the spread to kids too young to get the vaccine. We need to prevent spread to people like my friend that can't get vaccinated due to legitimate medical reasons. We need to prevent the spread to teachers. In order to maintain in-person learning as long as possible, we need to keep infections down. Masking is the best defense, and vaccinations, of course. COVID-19 has been shown to not just make people very sick and die, there are many other debilitating results as well. It is not a binary choice, death or health. While children did not seem as susceptible earlier, the current Delta variant is sickening younger and younger people. In Kentucky, from June 15th to July 14th, 0 to 9 years old, the cases increased 110%. 10 to 19 years old, they increased 104%. 20 to 29, they increased 84%, and 30 to 39, 55%. We know that the Delta variant is growing very rapidly amongst unvaccinated. Bottom line, we need to require masks in schools as much as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Our last speaker before we return to our agenda is Tara Walker. After Ms. Walker, we will take a 5-minute break. We will continue with our business, and at the end of the meeting, the additional speakers will be allowed to speak. Tyra Walker.
Thank you, board members and Dr. Polio. Thank you for thinking about the teachers, Dr. Polio. This is not what I want to talk about, and I'm so sorry. But I have been sitting out here listening to this. But I want to thank you all for thinking about the teachers who have to be in the building with students and other teachers. And you all want us to be protected. You all want us to go home and be able to raise our family. For some of you all who don't know, I have 9 children now because my sister died and my mother is dead. So guess what? I have to raise my kids. I want to be COVID free so that I can continue to raise the 9 children that I have inherited over the past 4 months. So thank you, board members and Dr. Polio, for thinking about the teachers and the educators in the building. Now to CRT. Critical race theory. I'm standing here now as a Kentucky Alliance co-chair, if I have time. I want to read our statement. There is no cause to fear teaching the history of Black people in this country or the system created in our history to maintain slavery. Critical race theory is not a relevant topic in JCPS or any other K-12 school in Kentucky. It is not being considered, nor is it being discussed in our other curriculum. Even those who say they oppose efforts to teach about racism in this country agree with us in the basic tenets of equality and truth. Let's work to bring equality, truth, understanding, and compassion to the youth together. Fear of education has gone too far. Our founding fathers were enlightened, highly educated men, but they lived in a different century, a different United States. We aren't seeking to erase or vilify the men who risked their lives to create the Declaration of Independence or pen the Constitution from which our rights are born. We are simply trying to update our education to match the present. The original sin of this country will never heal if we refuse to see it. It is time to stop teaching our children alternate facts. It's time to stop pretending this country was built by white scholars while hiding Black leaders and making slavery sound like a loving arrangement. It is time for Black children to see images of themselves in history books. It is time to acknowledge the price Black people were forced to pay to build this country. It is time to put all facts in our curriculum, regardless of whether they have people uncomfortable. Growth and learning are born only from expanding the mind with knowledge. We are not wanting to teach hate. We are here to teach love and the truth.
Thank you. At this time, the board will recess for 5 minutes. We are recessed for 5 minutes. For those who wish to leave, please do so now. We will return to our business agenda, and then we will return to our speakers. 5 minutes, please.
I just want to give you guys an update. The board listened to close to an hour's worth of speakers before they went to regular business. They have a rule where they do 45 minutes worth of speaking, and then they suspend the rest of the comments until after they've completed their business. And if anybody is signed up to speak and still sticking around, then they'll finish listening to the speakers that have signed up. And I just want to talk about that real briefly, because the speakers that spoke tonight, the mask mandate is on the agenda. So anyone who indicated that they were speaking on an agenda item, such as the mask mandate, or the U of L spoke about the program regarding critical race theory, specifically as it pertains to U of L. And so those were people that were on the agenda. Those of us who signed up to speak about teaching accurate history, teaching critical race theory, teaching equity, diversity and inclusion, all of those topics, that was not an agenda item. So therefore we were bumped to follow those who were speaking on agenda items. But if you listen to the speakers, you actually heard probably 3 that spoke about critical race theory, and they essentially cut in line by misinforming the board about their topic, so that they said they were going to speak probably about masks, but then once they got up there, they didn't talk about masks at all. They talked about indoctrination and Marxism and all those false equivalencies that aren't even pertinent to what's going on. Tyra got to speak. Tyra was actually the very first person to sign up to speak when they started taking names, but she signed up before the agenda had been published, so we didn't know what was going to be on the agenda. And as soon as I found out that she had signed up, I called. That was a afternoon, and I called the very next morning and signed up and asked what number I was, and I was the second speaker to sign up. And so, and I put my topic as All History Matters, and I did not, they cut it off at Tyra tonight, so I believe that I will be the first speaker if I'm still here when they finish their business, which could take a couple hours, I'm not sure. If I'm still here and I'm called to speak, I think I'll probably be the first, and there were like 19 others that signed up to speak after us, and there's still those people that you saw at the Oldham County meeting and at storming our board meeting and our work session, I should say. They're still in there. They're still in the central auditorium. So I believe that they're planning to stick around until they can speak. And they probably did say they were speaking about critical race theory. And so that's why they weren't one of the ones that were called at the beginning. So I just want to document that and make people aware that it was quite offensive that parents and teachers and community leaders and activists and organizers that have been coming to these board meetings. I've been coming since 2013, speaking at board meetings and also working within the system democratically, trying to be part of the solution, and being patient and not disrupting meetings. And these folks came to our meeting tonight misinformed about what they were speaking on in some cases, so that they got to cut in line. And this is the first time the public has been permitted to speak since before the pandemic. And so we have pressing issues, those of us that have been fighting the system even longer than me, the people that have been coming to these board meetings since, many, many years. And they've been waiting their turn for an opportunity to speak about real concerns that affect our students of color, students in poverty, students in trauma, students with disability, students experiencing racial trauma and gun violence, and we have segregated schools, we have an inequitable student assignment plan, we have numerous items that need to be addressed, and they wasted an hour of the public's time that has real concerns. And so to me, that's just a reflection of privilege. That's a reflection of them having the ability to show up and run and show up the first time there's an inconvenience for them, the first time that they might be forced to be required to wear masks, to be respectful of others who may have a higher risk. And we're not saying to be afraid of the virus, we're saying be respectful of your neighbor. And they took that opportunity to show up and bombard our board meeting with misinformation and equate it to the struggles and the suffering and the trauma and the various things that our students have been struggling to have addressed for a long time. But statewide is where the decision is being made. And so we have to educate people across the state, because these people across the state are also involved with our foster care systems and our juvenile justice systems, and we have the highest child abuse statistics. So we have to be able to address things that qualify as child abuse, and many of the things that are racially driven are often swept under the rug, covered up, lied about. Grievances are filed against whistleblowers. Things like that are happening because we are not truly looking at cause and effect and addressing root cause issues. So, I was talking about the lady out front that interrupted. She didn't really want to hear the answers to the questions, because our answers would be come to the board meetings, come to the work sessions, come to the strategy meetings and be part of the solution. And instead they just want to distract with misinformation. So they clearly aren't here to be part of the solution. They're here to drum up their base with the red meat that Trump supporters are flocking to. And, you know, we had, it's no coincidence that what is happening, the Senate, the House Select House Committee that is investigating the January 6th insurrection started today. And it's no coincidence that the people that are believing the lies at the national level and storming our Capitol are also storming our board meetings and storming our work sessions and disrupting at the local level, because they can't be part of the solution the authentic way, because their arguments don't hold water. Their arguments are invalid. So they distract and distort. And a lady inside was saying things like, I want to see the curriculum. And I want to say to her, join your site-based decision-making council. This is a site-based decision-making council decision. So get on your PTA, show up at your meetings, start asking how you can be part of the solution. And another thing that I want to just point out, and then I'm going to go back in and see what's going on. But another thing I want to point out is all of the people that spoke tonight, either against the mask mandate or against teaching critical race theory, were white. And we're hearing from Black people that they want this taught. They want people to understand biases and harms and trauma and injustices that are happening because of the color of their skin and the inaccurate reporting of historical data as it pertains to our students of color as well as our LGBTQ students. And so it's really offensive to have a bunch of white faces up there saying that these things are racist or these things are hateful or divisive, when if you just listen to the affected people, the impacted people, they will tell you otherwise. So we need to do a better job of listening to the people that are affected by these decisions and not talking over them or talking as if they're not in the room. They're in the room. Let's ask them and let's amplify them. So I'm going to go back in and see if it's going to be a while before we get to the last of our speakers. There could still be some interesting things tonight. So thanks everybody for following.
I realize some people may have left, and I apologize for that. But in fairness to all, we will go through the list. I do have the authority to say we're not going to do speakers, but let's not do that tonight. So our first speaker is Gay Edelman, and after her will be Sadiqa Reynolds.
Dear JCPS, first I want to thank you for putting students first and passing the mandate to require masks in schools. As I was watching these testimonies this evening by people I've never seen before other than storming a work session last month, I wondered why they don't know the answers to the questions that they're asking. And I realize it's because they haven't been coming to the meetings. They haven't been speaking at board meetings. They haven't been attending community forums. They haven't been trying to be part of the solution. And I've been coming to board meetings since 2013, and I'm still just a babe in the woods when I look out at some of the members of the audience here who have been working through the process, the democratic process, the way that it's intended. Yes, it's slow, and yes, it's painful. But I couldn't help but think that what I saw tonight was privilege. Privilege to make everything about showing up at these meetings and griping about an inconvenience, really, that will possibly save, even if it's just 3 lives, it saves lives. And I just think about all the things that we've waited a year and a half during a pandemic and a movement for Black lives to just have an opportunity to speak for 3 minutes. And we wasted an hour of our time tonight listening to things that aren't even relevant, when if nothing else, this demonstrates why we need to be teaching critical race theory in our schools. because of the lack of understanding and the lack of willingness to put students first, all students. Some of the people that have been showing up at these meetings are tied to 3%ers and hate groups and nationally known white supremacist organizations. And they're the same people that are part of a House Select Committee hearing that's taking place in DC right now. It's the same ideology that is red meat for the base. It's full of misinformation. And so I wanted to talk about things like student assignment plan and where we are with the student assignment plan. And even if you can't pass the big chunks of the student assignment plan, can't we go ahead and remove the application barrier for the families who live in West Louisville? Even if we can't implement dual credit, dual resides, can't we go ahead and remove the barrier that prevents students who live there from being able to simply apply to attend school close to home? Can't we go ahead and make sure that, I believe I remember in the superintendent's report last summer that you said you were going to have 3 counselors in every low performing school. And so tonight I think I heard mention of counselor in more of a singular sense. And I just want to make sure that we didn't lose that as part of our demands that we worked really hard to have heard, even though we couldn't speak at board meetings. We wanted to make sure that we had counselors in every school. We wanted to prioritize counselors over cops. And that was a commitment that we thought we heard from you through all the noise. We've been waiting to be heard. And so,
thank you, ma'am. Thank you for bearing with us and being with us at this time. Sadiqa Reynolds.
I signed up a little bit earlier, and I'm glad I didn't speak, because now what I would say to you all is thank you so much for following the CDC recommendations. Thank you for listening to the governor. Thank you for protecting our students. Thank you for protecting our teachers. They deserve that. It is very frustrating to sit in the audience or even to be in this community and listen to the arguments that are being made, and especially to recognize that the same people who are arguing against wearing masks are the same people who are arguing against the teaching of critical race theory or accurate history, are the same people, belong to the same group that threatened to hurt our superintendent. And I really do hope that as you think through things moving forward, when we think about equity, when we think about the history that is being taught, obviously we are not teaching critical race theory in K through 12. We know that. It's a false argument, it's a false herring, and we shouldn't be distracted. But we also have to understand very clearly that we can do better. And I think, and I really do believe that part of the challenge with an accurate history being taught is not that people believe that our children are so fragile that they cannot handle the accuracy, but instead they really do believe that if our children were empowered with a proper education around history, they would make better choices. And that's not just Black children, that's white children. I think there are a large group of people in this community and in this country that don't want to see the world change. And it is, in fact, the children who will lead us. And so I challenge you to stand your ground as you move forward, thinking about equity and history and what it is that you allow and force to be taught in our schools. We need to do better. We must do better. And so I say to you, as you sit there with your mask on, some of you, you think about who is opposing the mask and what else they are opposing. And as you move forward, you think about who you are aligned with, because those people who would say, I don't want masks, and those folks who would laugh when you bring up the numbers of children who have died or not died or been sick, people who would laugh, they don't have the right to decide how my child, Black, or his child, white, should be educated. They are not the leaders, you are, and we are asking you to stand your ground on these issues. Thank you so much. I sincerely thank you for following the recommendations of the CDC.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your remarks. Thank you. Our next speaker is Chris Hartman. And
Chair Porter, Dr. Polio, board members, good to see you all. Thanks for your patience. I am Chris Hartman. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm executive director of the Fairness Campaign. And I'm here simply to support critical race theory. Not that I am in any way under the delusion that critical race theory is currently being taught in our schools, but I do believe, and the Fairness Campaign believes, that it should be. And we know that opponents of critical race theory or thinking critically about race are not just against teachers teaching the truth about race and our racist history in America, but we know that they are also against our teachers teaching honestly about gender and sexuality, and especially topics that address Black, queer, and trans youth. And so I think that we need to look no further than recent studies and statistics to know why critical race theory is crucial to our curriculum. Our friends at the Trevor Project conducted a 2020 national survey of LGBTQ youth mental health. And when 44% of Black LGBTQ youth have seriously considered suicide, and 60% of Black trans and gender non-binary youth have also seriously considered suicide, then critical race theory is crucial to our curriculum. When 63% of Black LGBTQ youth report symptoms of major depressive disorder, critical race theory is crucial to our curriculum. And when 38% of Black LGBTQ youth reported discrimination based on sexual orientation, when more than half of Black LGBTQ youth report race-based discrimination, and 25% of Black transgender and gender non-binary youth report that they have been physically threatened or harmed due to their gender identity, then critical race theory is crucial to our curriculum. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Don't buy into the snake oil. I know that you won't. I want you to know that I and the Fairness Campaign support unequivocally fact-based critical analysis of racism in America, sexism in America, homophobia and transphobia in America. By ignoring it, it does not go away. We must address these things head on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I will call Dennis Cornell's name just in case. Dennis Cornell is not here. The next speaker is Greg Erskine. Greg Erskine. After I see him coming, after Greg Erskine will be Angela Sheehan.
Hi there, my name is Greg Erskine. I'm a father of 4 here in Louisville. Over the last couple of months and tonight, we've been seeing a lot of hullabaloo about critical race theory, or CRT. Whenever I try to learn more about it, I keep coming to the same problem, which is that there does not seem to be any kind of agreed upon definition for what it is. State Rep Matt Lockett has proposed bill request BR 69, which he says will outlaw it. So I took a look at this bill. Item 7 in BR 69 would prevent students from getting any instruction that would induce, she said, discomfort, guilt, anguish, or any other form of psychological distress on account of a student's race, sex, or religion. That's a laudable goal, but it's unrealistically broad. If my white kid learns about the history of slavery and sees that slave masters were white, it's a pretty reasonable response for her to ask herself, would I have gone along with that system? Would I have tried to uphold it? And pondering that could indeed induce her to feel discomfort. If the state legislature passes a law as stupid and cowardly as this one, it will not eliminate anguish from the souls of our students. We don't have the technology to do that. What it will do is make teachers afraid to speak honestly about our history. My kid is almost kindergarten age, and when she starts at JCPS, I want to make sure that she's learning honest facts about the world as it is, as it has been, because that is the foundation to knowing how the world can be and how we can make our worlds better. Will some of these facts make her uncomfortable? They might, and that's good. The purpose of school is not to coddle, it is to make us better at thinking. So I look at the agenda for tonight's meeting and I didn't see squat about CRT. What I see is diligent and hardworking members of the school board focusing on actual problems and trying to find solutions to them. You guys are already on the right track, and I thank you for that. But if BR 69 ends up becoming law, I urge you all to push back against it as hard as you can in whatever ways you can. And in the meantime, please do not listen to the anti-CRT lunatics. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Once again, I apologize for the lateness of the evening, but this was the first time that we had speakers. We will not, hopefully, make this a habit. that we end the meeting at this hour. But thank you for everyone that stayed. Thank you for everyone that spoke. Thank you for everyone that came to the meeting tonight. So now there is no executive session. There are no additional action items at the hour of 10 p.m. Is there a motion to adjourn?
You've been listening to Save Our Schools with Dear JCPS on Forward Radio 106.5 FM. Please join us on our Facebook page, Dear JCPS, and you can also keep up to date with our posts and blogs and mobilization efforts by visiting us on dearjcps.com. Thank you.